Good morning. We are live on the Adoption Connection. And today I'm so excited. We get to interview Isaac Etter. He is the CEO of Identity Learning, and it is an amazing resource for adoptees and adoptive families. And it actually confronts a lot of issues like race and a lot of the things that come possibly into play post-adoption. So I'm going to jump on here. We're going to add him in. I see it. Let's see if we can get you on here. Good morning.
Good
How
morning.
are you?
Hey, good. How are you? It's good to
I
see you
am.
again.
Yeah, you too. I know it's been a couple of weeks now that we were together over at the NCHS Full Circle Conference for the adoptees and the
Mhm.
adoptive families. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was a great day.
Um, my mind was blown that whole. I knew I was right where I was supposed to be as an adoptive parent that day. It was
Yeah,
genuinely one of the most amazing experiences. And you are incredible and your speaking is amazing. So I
thank
just want to
you.
get right into what we're going to talk about today. You are
Absolutely.
the founder and CEO of Identity Learning. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Identity is my company. What we do is we create resources for adoptive and foster families. Really, I was training and speaking for years, and whether I was in Nebraska, California, or Pennsylvania, where I'm located, I was hearing all the same issues, the same challenges that adoptees were having with identity, as well as the same challenges that parents were having supporting their adoptees. And so I started Identity so that I could create stuff that parents could use on the daily part of their journey instead of just being maybe like a once a month or once a quarter or maybe even once a year training.
Mhm.
I love speaking. You got to see that part of me, and I
Yeah.
do enjoy doing it. But just like I know, that's a day. The adoptive and foster parenting journey is daily, not just a day. And so at Identity, what we're trying to do is make the daily process for adoptive and foster families more understandable, much more enjoyable, and have families bond and understand each other in a deeper way.
You said something that day that stuck with me. Obviously, you've had some journeys with not only your identity as an adoptee, but also
Yeah.
in a race type scenario as well. So you were saying how people often get stuck in that circle of identity and race.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your journey in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think what many people don't consider for transracial adoptees is that if we don't grow up in communities that look like us, often we will not necessarily identify with people that look like us. And so as a 17, 18-year-old freshman in college, I knew that I was black. I understood I was black, but I did not know anybody that was black that wasn't also adopted. So it was actually really confusing for me to also identify as a black person.
Mhm.
Certainly, I could look in the mirror and see it, but that wasn't the daily experience that I was having. It wasn't an identity that I knew how to even connect with.
Mhm.
And so, oftentimes, especially adoptees that are transitioning into adulthood, get stuck in this loop to where they're starting to have experiences of people of color. They're starting to understand that that is an experience that they are going to have, but it is not one that they necessarily identify with because they've never had to before. And so it becomes this very, very confusing loop for adoptees where they understand it, but they don't connect to it. But now they're confused because they don't know that they fit in with black people, but now they don't fit in with white people the same way. And so a lot of what I'm trying to display in this analogy is how important it really is for adoptees to grow up in communities where people that look like them, for their parents to have conversations about race and identity with them,
Mhm.
because this is a very common loop that transracial adoptees, especially that grow up in more rural communities, experience.
Okay, so I have currently a 17-year-old, and we are a transracial family. He is a biracial adoptee, and so we are in the throes of it right now. So it's it,
17.
it to get nitty gritty. Like he is in a school that is very much a broad cultural school. I've always celebrated different races, and including his own as he's been growing up. And now he's starting to dabble. His language is changing.
Yeah,
He's starting to identify on that side of it, and I mean, biracially, he's only about a quarter of the black population, and then most of his race is white. But he's
yeah,
really identifying inside of that right now because he hasn't been exposed to it because I'm white.
yeah.
So, other than outside sources, so what are some things you can say to adoptive families like myself that really had maybe revolutionized what we can do for you as as a biracial adoptee?
Yeah. And I think biracial adoptees definitely have kind of a confusing situation sometimes because they are kind of half of the race of their parents most of the time, and then also trying to identify with this other half of them as well. I mean, I think we often see that, especially adoptees in mixed race situations, identify more with the people of color identity,
Hmm.
right? Also, it's, it might be more how they look also. Many biracial people look black also, whether it just be their hair or even their skin tone. I think one of the best things you can do is expose them to
Yep.
people that look like them. So have them in that community, like you said, with schools where they can kind of get a mix of how different people might be identifying, how people in their community might be identifying, not only at school but also in an administrative way.
Hmm.
I think that's something that often gets missed is how important it is for kids to have adult figures that look
Yes.
like them. I remember growing up, not as a biracial kid, but just really struggling just to even wonder what I was going to look like as an adult. And so I think that's another really powerful way that we can support transracial adoptees. Another one, when it comes especially to this 17 time of life, is actually just trying to open up the conversation about what
Yep.
this means for them, right? We might see our kids using different language. That's a big one I hear all the time, right?
Hmm.
Older teenage kids identifying with more their black side may start using language that's more prominent in the black community.
Yes.
And so actually having conversations about that and what that means for them, and maybe even setting boundaries around your home with
Hmm.
it, because you guys are still not a black family, right? So sometimes it's not great when certain words are getting thrown around the home,
Right.
right, for the other kids. And so actually kind of opening up this dialogue and letting them know that you're okay with them identifying in this way. You understand that they're going to have a different experience, but learning how to kind of bridge that
Hmm.
gap, because that's a big one, I think, especially for the older
Yeah.
adoptees. Um,
I always tell my son, I'm like, okay, so when my 8-year-old white daughter goes to her school and uses that language, she's
yes,
probably going to be looked down upon.
exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
But these are the real life struggles, I think, of
Yeah.
transracial families that they're not on the TV the same
Right.
way, right? We see some of the other ones depicted like hair and maybe some of those cultural gaps, but honestly, language is a big one, experiences, what your child may want to do as they get older, and the communities that they may want to be a part of that you're not used to. Those are the real struggles.
Yeah.
And I think that the sooner adoptive families are ingrained in communities that look like their
Yeah.
child, even in small ways like attending like a yearly
Yes.
festival, can be really big in understanding and bridging this gap of understanding that will inevitably happen between you and your
Yeah.
child.
And I think you said something there. So there was just recently a festival here called Afrofest. And I'm like, if I would
Oh,
have known, I would have totally taken
yeah,
my
I
kid.
respect that. Yes, yes,
But
yes.
I'm a hairstylist, so I think that is something
Yeah,
that you guys touch on. I see you share a lot of different people who are in the community of hair
yeah,
because that is a huge thing from the very beginning. I've seen white parents bring their black kids in my salon and crying because they just don't understand.
absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about that side.
Yeah. So I've heard hair issues for years. I remember watching Grey's Anatomy and it being depicted in the episode when, gosh, I can't believe Meredith and Derek adopt their black daughter. Right. So this is not only just something that we know about, but it's often a TV trope as well.
Yep.
And so we partnered with Taria, who is a hair care trainer specifically for transracial families, to really put out resources that we feel like not only helps parents understand their child's hair, but also understand how to connect with them through it. Unlike, maybe some other families who are just trying to learn it, or maybe when you go to a hairstyle, they're just doing your hair, right? And that's an important work. We pay for that work. We want it done well when we pay somebody to do our hair.
Mhm.
But as a parent, you're not only looking to do their hair, but you're also looking to connect with them through that. You're
Yes.
also looking to teach them and empower them through it.
It's
And
so
so,
cultural too. I think it's something that you
absolutely.
get they bond early on with their families that way. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
mhm.
And so what we try to do is help make that process not be so intimidating.
Mhm.
You've worked in hair, so it's probably not as
Mhm.
intimidating for you.
Right.
But we run into, just like you said already, a lot of people who this is a very scary part of their parenting journey,
Yep.
maybe something that they failed already in. And so we use a mix of text and video to try and really walk parents through why it's important to do, what it is they're trying to do, right? So whether it's a hairstyle or understanding curl pattern or even products, and then also give them video modules so that there's just a lot of learning all in one that
Mhm.
makes you feel really confident and grounded in what you're learning.
That's good. And I'll just be real. Like, I'm
Yeah.
a very good hairstylist,
Yeah.
and I do actually, I'm multicultural hair salon anyway. And so for me, I do quite often black hair.
Yeah.
And I have about several clients that have it. But my son, that doesn't mean he believes me or trusts me because I am still mom. No
Exactly.
matter if I'm white, black, or I mean, I could be green and he'd be like, "You're my mom. You don't know what you're talking about." So
Exactly.
he was, I think that's a big deal. Even to, if you're bonding, that's fine. But sometimes I even feel like going into a salon that is meant specifically for their culture is actually very uniting too, as a bonding experience, even for me. And I've brought him into black hair salon before as a white mom, and I'm like, all right, let's go, bud. You want
Yeah.
to see what it's about? I'll show you. And they say the exact same things I do. So like,
Exactly. Exactly.
ultimately, they just got to figure it out. So
But again, it's that bonding moment, right? It's giving them a chance to go. Like he'll probably go to barbershops and salons on his own as an adult. So even kind of using that as a way to connect and bridge that gap for him is so important. And so it's like you get the both
yeah.
and. You've done it at home, you've built that bond, but then you're also exposing him to these settings that he may take his own kids to one day.
Yes. And honestly, you were talking about the journey of your own hair and
Yeah.
what you have gone through with yourself.
Oh
So I know
God.
you've been through some stuff.
Yes. I've been through most hairstyles you can imagine. I've had different designs. I've had long hair. I've had short hair. I've had waves. Right now, I'm having a little bit of long hair. I'm actually going to get a haircut today.
Nice.
So maybe I could have done this while getting a haircut. That would have been interesting.
No doubt.
Um,
That's awesome.
but right now, I'm a little bit in the longer phase. But I've taken, it's been countless hours of learning, listening at the barbershop to what other people are saying, and kind of trying to regurgitate some of
Yeah.
it, hours on Pinterest. And so my first kind of hair journey was actually on Tumblr as a teenager, finding different hairstyles on there, and then just having my mom drop me off at a random barbershop and just showing them a
Wish
picture.
me luck. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Now
Now
I
it's
know some more products.
YouTube and
Yeah.
all the things.
Yes, now
TikTok.
I know some more products and know what I'm going in there looking for and
Yeah.
have a barber that I trust. But yeah, hair journey has been a long one for me. I mean, I didn't even go to a barber shop until I was 15 or 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't even have like a lineup until
Yeah.
I was, almost an adult.
Yeah. Well, and I will say I can talk about that subject for
Yeah.
hours, but I do want to get into some, I want to get into some a little bit more dramatic stuff with you.
Yeah.
You had a couple stories that spoke to me really strongly as a white person, to be honest. You were running with a pack of kids, you said, back to your mom's house when a police officer was in the future. Can you tell me about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the night of my 17th birthday. And, as a teenager, this was my kind of senior year of high school. I had come across some things online about race and racism that I didn't really understand. I was trying to make sense of. And so, leading up to this night, I had a lot of questions around whether racism was real,
Mm.
whether I was going to struggle with it, whether that was going to be my experience. And, me and my friends, we were kind of on this long walk late at night. We live in rural Pennsylvania, similar to Nebraska area.
Yeah. Yes.
And we were coming down this long hill, and at the top of the hill there was a cop car flashing around a light like it was looking for somebody. And so we kind of ran home as thinking somebody made a noise complaint. And as we were running, one of my friends shouted out, "It's all right. Isaac's the only one that's going to get in trouble." And I remember that's the moment that it hit me. It hit me that, at least part of what I was reading was true.
Yeah.
There were semblances of it that were true. And not only did I not really know about it or wasn't prepared for it, my friends knew. And if my friends knew, then my parents probably knew. But nobody talked to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of a mix of like heartbreak and betrayal all in one.
Yeah, that's really tough. And I think, speaking to even my son about how you would interact with the police officer and how different people see you in the community, and, you're not dark enough to look black, but you're not white passing either, which I never knew that word existed. And someone had mentioned that to me, that the word white passing, like you walk
Yeah,
into a room, you're not the lightest one. So I think it's interesting that those things are very aware. You're very aware of those things as a black man, to be
absolutely.
able to see this. Even and adoption has nothing to do with that part, but it's all encompassing because you're being raised in a family that doesn't look like you.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, being white passing, and there are adoptees, transracial adoptees, who experience totally different things when they are white passing. Maybe more dismissal of them even being a person of color, right? And so it is it's a big deal, I think, in adoption, but it's just in general as well, because it really changes the experience I think you have in certain rooms.
100%. And I think one of my things I always tease my son about, sometimes I can get a little bit darker than him,
Yeah.
I always say, but his hair is
Oh yeah.
absolute afro.
I was
So
gonna say, yeah,
to
your
actually
son's got some
be
big hair.
white passing in a setting if his hair was different, but his hair totally gives that part away for
Oh,
him.
100.
So he will always feel that, I think. And there's been time, and there was something he said to me in the car when he goes, because you go through it, I think, as a
Mhm.
17-year-old. And he said, Mom, I think I understand why I feel the way I feel, and it's because you're my mom, but you're not my mom. And I
Yeah.
was like, and I said to him, I completely hear you and I get it and I understand. And you are valid in that conversation that you're having in your head. And I'm still going to be here. And I am your mom.
Yeah.
And I understand I'm not your biological mom, but I am here for you. And you talk a little bit about giving that space to them or giving that safe space to them. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that your son feels, comfortable to say that to you and have that conversation with you
Well, it
because,
took a while.
yeah, exactly. It does take a while, but it's still beautiful when it happens. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because there are some adoptees that never feel comfortable saying those kinds of things out loud, whether to their parents or to anybody else, right? It might be a moment that they just have with themselves or other adoptees. And so it's really powerful that you can be in that space together. And I think that most adoptees are feeling that at one point or another. They are understanding that a lot of their challenges to understand themselves are stemming from this one thing. And that is, I think, a heartbreaking part of the adoptee experience is understanding that you have, in most cases, a wonderful family, a happy life. I have great siblings. Like, there's a lot of times, there's a lot of beautiful connection in your life, but you understand that there's this part of you that feels um, hurt or maybe betrayed, and you can't necessarily get over it until you get through it. And I think, especially as adoptees are getting to these later teen years into adulthood, they're really, really starting to realize maybe some of the gravity of how this has showed up in their mindset, whether it be pushing you away as their parents, whether it's pushing friends away, relationships away. And so I actually think when I hear a 17-year-old express that out loud, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so ahead of me. Like, you're so much better than I was. Like, it took me longer to realize how big of an impact it was having. And so it's heavy and it's hard. And I think that the sooner adoptive parents can sit in that moment with their child, the better the relationship is going to be for them. And also the better the experience the adoptee is going to have. Because rejection and abandonment, especially that early, they have a lasting effect,
Yes.
right? And so whether it was, the best thing for the child to be placed for adoption, whether it shouldn't have happened, no matter what the circumstances that
Right.
led to the adoption, that moment hits adoptees in some shape or form. And realizing how it shows up is really, really important for adoptee to be able to have healthy relationships in the
Yeah.
future.
Agreed. And I think it's indifferent, or I guess it's different with every adoptee
Yeah.
because there are some scenarios where you're in an open adoption,
Yep.
or maybe
Exactly.
the biological mom kept more children than she placed, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you have various things that happen. I know of a family that the mom has been incarcerated and she's had a couple kids, and she's looking to keep the second one as best as she can. The first one's been adopted by my friend. And so I'm like, there's going to be that challenge again because
Absolutely.
she worked to keep one and not the other. And that's not to
Huge.
say that she couldn't have maybe even lost the second one at that point.
Yeah.
You just never know. And the adoptees don't understand that. I'm still rejected. I'm still placed away from where I was supposed to be. So what are some ways you think, or is there books that you can read? What do you think that you want to say to an adoptee right now that may be struggling with this?
Yeah, so adoptees that are struggling with this, I think the first thing is that you have to realize that it's, in a sense, like okay that you feel that way.
Hmm.
I think that you don't have to like make yourself feel bad about feeling that way. Running from a feeling is a great way to keep that feeling with you, right? And there's a quote somewhere out there like
That's
that.
good. Say that
Yeah.
again.
It's like running from a feeling is like a sure way to make sure that feeling stays
Days.
with you.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's powerful.
yeah. I forget where I read that. I didn't make that up. I
No,
read
yeah,
that
but
somewhere,
still,
but
that's good.
yeah, but it's a great quote, and I've thought about that. I think I saw that a couple years ago, and I think about it all the time. Um, yeah, I think with adoption, you have to confront it. You have to sit with it. You have to realize all the different ways that you've thought about it before you can, in a sense, move on. Not that I think you ever fully move
No.
on, but I think you learn how to live through in a very different way.
Yes.
And so I always suggest adoptees to actually spend time sitting with it, even if it's over the course of years. Don't rush yourself through that process. I've personally found that adoptee community really helps me, spending time with other adoptees who are also trying to navigate feelings of identity loss and issues. I've found great books. A really popular one that I read all the time on Instagram is Nicole Chung's All You Can Ever Know.
Okay.
Um, this is a really popular book as well. And so I think it just does a good job of confronting a lot of feelings that all adoptees have.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I would sit with it. I would also, if you can, get therapy. So, like, maybe the top three things are like confront the emotion and allow yourself to sit with it. So, be kind to yourself and just understand that it's valid that you feel this way. Even if nobody in your life validates it, it's okay that you feel this way. Find community. There's online community. If you search it, there's a lot of cities that have adoptee meetups, whether it be Adoptees Connect or other groups. There's also a lot of online groups. And then I would also go to therapy or read books.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you can't afford therapy, which totally makes sense, we
Right.
know that everybody's in a different circumstance. Maybe find a book or two that's by an adoptee that can at least maybe give you some language to what you're feeling. That personally has helped me to just put words to some things I felt my whole
That's
life.
powerful
And
too.
exactly. So
Yep.
giving yourself words gives you the ability to maybe process it and move through it a little bit differently. Maybe also see how it's showing up in your life.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest things for me was seeing how my idea that everybody was going to leave me was showing up in my relationships, right? And so sometimes reading these things by other adoptees allows you to see yourself in a new lens, and that has been really helpful for me.
That's huge. And you tend to push people away. I think we all do it as a protection mechanism whenever you feel
Yeah.
threatened or like you're going to be hurt. You just put that wall there. And adoptive parents have to be strong enough to know that that wall isn't personal.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yes.
personal attack. And I think a lot of parents will be hurt. And how can you do this to us? We've done everything for you and because of us. And those words are not something that an adoptee can truly like digest because it doesn't have anything really to do with the adoptive parents. So
100%. 100%. And it's one of those, I think, really hard parts about being an adoptive parent, and something that I wish we talked about more on the front end of it, because those are the moments where you build the trust, right? The moments where you don't push them away, also where you don't reject them for putting up their walls, also where you
yeah,
show them that you're the unconditional love that they've
I'm
been looking for, right?
here anyway.
Exactly. And so those are I think actually good signs. My mom talks about that too, that sometimes it can even be a good sign when an adoptee feels comfortable enough to have these moments with you, to lash out at you, because even though it's not fun for you, it does mean
Right.
that they are pushing you to see if you're going to be one of these people that runs away,
Yep.
right? They trust you enough to maybe do this. And when you keep showing up consistently over years and years, the goal and the hope would be that it only helps you guys grow closer.
And I think that parents, if they can get over the heartbreak of hearing I mean, we were trained really early on when I
Yeah,
went through adoptive parenting that at one point the child is going to say to you, "You're not my real parents."
right.
Be prepared for that. That is valid. Let them feel
Yeah,
that. And I was like, I would okay, what did I do as a biological child to my parents? I said some really crazy things sometimes because I was hurt or I was gonna make it to where they would, okay, I'm gonna keep you at my arm's length because I'm doing something I don't want you to know about.
exactly.
But ultimately, like those words are only said to people that you feel the safest with.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you're not gonna say that
100%.
to people that you're trying to gain anything else
Yeah.
from. So
Yeah, and these are, I think, the more hard moments you sit in with your adoptee, the better.
yep.
Adoptive parenting is so different than I think even regular parenting, that you have to really understand that sometimes, like, the hardest way is the way. It's actually the easiest way,
Mhm.
because avoiding some of these hard conversations, avoiding the elephant in the room, which is usually the grief and the loss, is
Yes.
actually a longer road than just maybe even early on giving your adoptee the language to say, hey, do you feel like maybe we might leave you?
Yep.
Are you feeling like maybe, are you feeling hurt by your own adoption? You know what I mean? Giving kids this language earlier
Opening
and
that.
going through it is so powerful, because you we kind of already alluded to it, but as like a 6, 7 year old, you're just being hurtful,
Mhm.
but you don't maybe know why you're being
Don't know.
hurtful. Yeah.
Well, I think as a parent, like it really truly brings you to a greater sense of self as well. I know that a
Absolutely.
lot of adoptive parents have said adoption isn't only something that changes the
Oh,
adoptee, it changes the adoptive
oh,
parents as well.
100%.
And it's made me a better biological parent as well as, I mean, there's no difference between my kids. I mean,
Yeah,
but there is
yeah,
at the same time. So there has to be that I love you the same as I love my other two. There is a difference between you guys. However, I celebrate that and know that I'm not going anywhere once you're mine. So
yeah,
adoptive parents have to be really strong and really self-aware of conversations. So,
yeah,
but so we kind of have ran the gamut. I want to respect
yeah.
your time. So I know you have
It's
other
fine.
things to do today.
Yeah,
What are some things that you want to make sure that adoptees here and adoptive parents here before I can? We've really said a
yeah,
lot, so you may have already said
yeah.
it, but if you want to reiterate anything,
Yeah,
you've got books, you've got resources, you've got so
absolutely,
many things attached to your identity.
absolutely,
Learning Instagram, so I'm sure people will follow, and I will
absolutely.
tag that obviously in our lineup. But what else you got for us, Isaac? Give us your
Yeah.
wisdom.
Well, I guess for adoptees is like I always like to make adoptees feel like they're or know that they are precious people, if that makes sense. I have a lot of just not just because I am one, but just because I spend so much time with adoptees now, and I've seen so much of my own internal pain throughout our community. I think that there's a big need for us to know that we are loved and we are lovable and we are precious people. And I try to make sure I did this a lot at the conference too. You might have noticed that when I was hosting the panel, I don't like adoptees doing negative self talk, even if they're trying to do it in a positive
Yes.
way, because I don't like this idea that we're hard to love.
Yeah.
I don't think we're hard to love. I think we
No.
just need different love. And so there's a lot of that for me. If there's one thing that I leave with adoptees, that we're precious people and that we do deserve to be loved in the ways that we need to be loved. And so that's for adoptees. For adoptive parents, I'd say stay in the game and learn and listen. So I think stay in the game, one, is like you have to, like you kind of mentioned, you have to realize that there's going to be the hard
Yeah.
moments and they're going to come and they're going to go, but you just got to stay in the game. And you got to learn and listen really well, not just to your adoptee, but also find other resources, whether it's our resources or somebody else's, where you can kind of take in some other perspective and some viewpoints, and also you get a deeper idea of what your child might be going
Yeah.
through. We have a docu-series at Identity. We have a podcast with me and my mom where we talk
Which
about
is
stuff like
great.
that. Thank you, thank
Mhm.
you. I love our podcast. So there are these resources out there where you can get a deeper dive into both your journey and the adoptee journey. And I'd say really take advantage of those, whether it just be on the car ride to work, whether it's at night, maybe you and your husband watching them or partner watching them at night. We've even heard of families watching our docu-series together to try
Mm,
and start a conversation, right?
that's
So
good.
take advantage of these resources and use them as a way to kind of go into conversations.
Mhm. I think it's imperative. I mean, if I could tell my 27-year-old self when I first opened that door to adoption and I got to
Yeah,
see him the first time, had I known what I was getting
yeah,
into then, I could have had a greater understanding earlier on.
absolutely.
Because I mean, there's a lot to
Of
consider.
course.
Um,
Yeah,
it has been dynamically amazing to be an adoptive parent and to meet
yeah,
you at the conference. Just, I
yeah,
know that you are in my life now for a time. This is
absolutely.
perfect timing for me to know
Yeah,
you. I've learned a lot from you and I've really tried to glean a lot from you as well because, it's important. And I'm hoping one day my son will be able to chat with you even more.
yeah,
So
that'd be awesome.
yeah,
I'd
but
love
you
that.
are incredible. I'm very
Thanks.
much identifying with your mother
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
So
good.
I
You love
I
doing
love
that
her.
though.
So
Yeah,
make sure you tell her hi, give her my love.
I will.
And
I
I am so thankful that you jumped on with me today. I know you're busy and I know you have a lot going
I
on.
was happy
So
to do it. Thank you for having me.
yeah,
Seriously.
it's my pleasure. So I'm going to save this and we're going to also put it on the YouTube. So if you want to
Okay.
share it, you are able to as well. But be sure you guys to follow identity.learning. That's
Yeah,
correct, right?
that's it.
Identity.learning and Isaac Etter's Instagram as well. And you guys, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Isaac. You're
you.
the best.
Happy
All
day,
right. Well,
so
have
you.
a
Thank
great
you.
day. We'll see you
Bye.
soon. Bye.